Welcome to PodcastRx, a new monthly podcast from Diamond Pharmacy Services.
Each episode is a conversation with the men and women who make Diamond the nation's largest correctional pharmacy provider, Pennsylvania's largest independently owned long-term care pharmacy, and a trusted retail pharmacy and medical supply provider to many in Western Pennsylvania.
We chat with pharmacists, nurses, technicians, and other key personnel for a deeper look at the administrative, clinical, and logistical challenges of filling prescriptions and delivering healthcare, from our local counter to across the country.
And we also get the occasional glimpse into the professional journeys of our guests and why they chose the careers in pharmacy and healthcare.
On this special edition of PodcastRx, we take you behind the scenes of the Diamond Educational Conferences. For the past 15 years, these events have given long-term care professionals in Pennsylvania, and more recently in Ohio, the chance to earn continuing education credit from courses taught primarily by Diamond Pharmacy personnel. With the 2019 conference season underway, and with this 15-year milestone in mind, we thought it would be fitting to bring you a special episode recorded live at the Ohio Educational Conference in October 2018. Your hosts, Adam Campbell, that's me, Ashley Fritz, and Eric Pinkerton had the chance to interview several speakers from that day's conference, getting a closer look at presentation topics such as elder abuse, dementia care, and vaccinations, all while getting their thoughts about the conferences at large. Throughout the episode, we sprinkled in a few casual conversations recorded with some conference attendees to highlight the experience from the other side of the podium. And because we held this conference at the Columbus Zoo, you'll also hear a lot about animals in this episode. This is PodcastRx. Welcome to this special edition of PodcastRx. We are live at the Diamond Educational Conference in Columbus, Ohio, Columbus Zoo in particular.
Yeah.
And really, this is the best setting for a conference that we have. I mean,
by far.
Yeah, I mean, just look behind us. We've got the African savanna behind us. I see some antelope out there. There's a giraffe just right off the railing.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful experience here. We're in the Africa exhibit. Is the conference center here at the Columbus Zoo, and the hosts here are so welcoming. They actually have one of the employees out there right now kind of baiting in the giraffes what looks to be cabbage leaves of some sort. So you get the full-on experience of nature and education here.
Absolutely. I would, admittedly, if I was an attendee here, I'd be a little distracted just always looking at the bountiful African wildlife out there.
I know as staff every year when we come here, I'm constantly distracted going outside and just wanting to be in awe at the creatures. It's really, really cool experience.
It is, and then they bring in creatures during the lunch portion of the conference. A couple handlers come in with like red pandas, penguins we've seen in the past. It's
baby kangaroos at sometimes, or wallabies. I'm not sure what.
Yeah. Well, of course, the main reason we're here is the education for long-term care professionals. That, proudly, it's all of our staff that presents these topics for free continuing education for. In this case, people specific to Ohio, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities out here in the Buckeye State. And we wanted to catch up with a few of them today just to get an idea of what they're talking about, but also how it relates to the overall long-term care industry and how, a pharmacy provider fits into that. And it should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a lot of fun chats with different folks today.
Oh, absolutely. Such a fun venue to learn, and just a great all-around experience. I keep coming back to that, but it's the full package here at the Columbus Zoo, so it's a great day. We hope you enjoy this much more informal episode of PodcastRx.
I am here with Trina Plazio. She's an RN and a CRNI, and she is our education coordinator and our infusion educator. So she does a lot with Diamond Pharmacy Services. Trina, welcome today. And I know today that you're speaking here at our Columbus Educational Conference on infusion therapy in long-term care. Can you tell me a little bit about why this is so important?
Well, the course itself, Ashley, is going to go over all the legalities of infusion therapy in long-term care and the differences between the RN and the LPN, because there are many, many state differences in what they can and cannot do. And it's very, very important for our facilities to know that so that they're compliant with laws and with their actual licensing. Then the rest of the course, we're actually going to go over the INS standards of practice. The standards of practice are something that they put out every 5 years, and that's something that everybody needs to know in order for them to be giving the gold practice when it comes to infusion therapy. So not everybody's aware of that, and not everybody's aware of the changes. So
Sure. Do you find that that's one of the biggest challenges with infusion therapy is keeping up to date on those best practices?
Absolutely. It's really hard, and it's hard to try to get our facilities to stay up to date. They'll be changing a lot of things, adding time frames to them, and the facilities are still using the old policies, and cost-effective wise, it's affecting them, and they don't quite realize that
Right.
they're behind the times. So trying to keep them up on the times, it can be quite challenging.
Sure, and of course, for the best patient care as well, for the best care for the person, obviously to stay up to date on the best practices is going to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Sure. So in regards, talking broader scope to your role here at Diamond as our education coordinator, you have a major hand in these conferences, developing the course line, and we always get excellent feedback on everything that we have to offer. As our education coordinator, what are your long-term goals, I guess, as we kind of grow this program?
Well, I'd like to bring in as many people as we possibly can. The education conferences that Diamond provides are unique because they are free, they are live. They do give credits, CEs, to RNs and to nursing home administrators and personal care and assisted living administrators. And a free live CE is a very rare thing. And I'm just so excited that Diamonds allows us that opportunity to provide those to the community. So long term, I would just like to see them grow. I would like to see more and more people taking advantage of them and taking advantage of the knowledge and the information that we're putting out there.
Absolutely, and you're right. Not only is it the CEs, it's the wealth of information. It's free. It's a really good day.
Lunch
we
and
get
breakfast.
lunch and breakfast. It's a really good day. Speaking to the educational conferences, you're right. They're free. It's the continuing education credits. It's a really good day at these really great venues. And throughout your career, Trina, what kind of educational, continuing education resources have you utilized to kind of keep you on top of your game?
Well, for me, being a CRNI, I'm always looking to INS, which is the Infusion Nurses Society, because they are the experts and they're an international company. So I always look to them, and that's where I usually get most of my CEs. But I can tell you that I'm always seeking out other CEs. Just because I'm an infusion nurse doesn't mean that those are the only CEs that I want to have.
Right.
And I always encourage people that just because you're in geriatrics, it doesn't hurt to know something about a pediatric.
Of course.
Or I'm always looking for a little bit more knowledge. You should always be broadening your horizons and taking in what you can find.
Absolutely. So with your colleagues that you have here, you have fellow RNs, what kind of feedback do you get from them as far as the value of what they get today?
Everybody is so positive, and especially when it comes to the RNs, just because RN credits are never free. Nothing is free for the RN. Mm-hmm. So it is so nice that we're able to offer those. So the RNs are always super excited. And when it comes to content, every participant has come to me and said that they've walked away with something, that they've taken something from the conference that they can use day to day in their respective positions.
And that's really the goal. We want to equip people to be more successful in their job role at their facility with their patients. That is the long-term goal. So I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. We have some really great topics today. You're doing the infusion therapy talk. We have some stuff about end-of-life care. I know we had a really great talk on elder abuse a little earlier. So throughout all your involvement in all these educational conferences, what have been some highlights and topics for you personally?
Well, Ashley, you really did put me on the spot here because obviously all of them are fantastic. I think coming from the pharmacy view, we've put together many programs that have been wonderful looking at Alzheimer's and dementia, and that's something very relevant in our field, in our geriatric field with our long-term care facilities. So the antipsychotics, our antimicrobial stewardship, we've actually done some courses that have helped our facilities create an entire program. So I'm real proud of those. The sepsis course, it put awareness out there to the facilities.
Absolutely.
So that they're recognizing and maybe preventing more serious conditions or even preventing some deaths. So those are some of my favorites, but obviously they're all fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate everything you do to help coordinate these conferences, Trina, and we look forward to seeing your talk on infusion therapy, and we thank you for your time sitting down with us today.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
What do you like most about coming here to the zoo for a conference?
I like seeing the animals.
What about the speakers and the education?
Wonderful. The speakers are wonderful. So I learn something new every year. Being a provider, I learn something different that I take back to the nursing homes and teach them.
What topic stood out today?
The C. diff topic and learning essential things that I can take back to the facility and teach the director of nursing and the administrator there.
Well, we're glad you have such a good time coming here and that you have a lot to take back with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to PodcastRx. I'm sitting here with Debbie Yakubowski. She's an RN consultant here for Diamond Pharmacy Services. Debbie, how are you enjoying the conference so far?
So far, the conference has been wonderful. The venue is just outstanding. The fact that we're here at the Columbus Zoo and we're getting an opportunity to see some of the African-based animals. I think everybody has been tremendously enjoying the giraffes in particular.
I would say that the Columbus one is definitely maybe the fan favorite of the Diamond here. Just
yeah,
because
it's
of the,
not your average venue.
No, not at all.
You're not in a hotel/conference center. You're actually doing something different. And at lunchtime, we're going to be having some hands-on experience with some animals. So that I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh, it should be very exciting. Now, how many years have you been doing presentations here at the Diamond Educational Conferences?
We started the Diamond Educational Conferences back at our corporate offices probably 15, 16 years ago. So I've actually been involved with them to that extent. We started them locally right in our pharmacy, and because of just the overwhelming response that we've had from our customers and prospective customers, they've just grown exponentially since then. And the fact that we do have pharmacy services and institutional pharmacies in other areas of not only the state of Pennsylvania but also in Ohio, we have expanded to be doing the 4 conferences a year. So it's been a great experience.
Excellent, excellent. Now, over the years that I've covered these conferences, from the technical end of it, from my end of it, I've seen you do a number of different presentations, and today your presentation is an interesting one. I don't personally come from a nursing or healthcare background, but I had the opportunity to sit in on yours and I ended up learning a lot. You want to explain what you were talking about today?
Yes, my topic was elder abuse, and actually I entitled it Elder Abuse, the Silent Crime, because of the fact that it truly is a silent crime. I put the statistic out there that only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse actually gets reported. So if you kind of factor that out, that means that for every 140 cases of elder abuse that you have, only 10 actually get reported to the proper authorities. And, you know, oftentimes it is a silent crime because of the fact that, number one, it's underreported. Number 2, the fact is you're dealing with an elderly population group, and oftentimes, whether it be because of dementia or whether it be because they are being taken care of by family care providers, they don't want to report the abuse, or they don't understand that they are being abused, or if they do understand that they are being abused, they don't know the channels to report the abuse, or oftentimes they don't even want to report a family member because they're afraid that family member will get in trouble. So it is a silent crime, and oftentimes I hear people say, well, it doesn't happen in my community, it's not on my back door, but it's everywhere.
You just don't hear about it.
You just don't hear about it,
Right.
Exactly.
It was interesting. I got, like I said, I got a chance to sit in on it, and I don't come from a healthcare background, and so all I knew going in was the title of it, and I wasn't sure if you were talking about elder abuse in the terms of from the nurses or staff towards the residents or vice versa, and it seems like it's actually quite often a two-way street. It can happen both ways.
Exactly. It can happen both ways. In my presentation, I discussed the fact that there are, similar characteristics. If you look at the abuser or the care provider, whether it be in an institutional setting or you look at a family member who's providing that care at home. And then there's also similar characteristics of individuals who are being provided the care. And so it is a two-way street in the fact that oftentimes you see certain traits that kind of lead up to an abusive situation on both sides. And, oftentimes it's personality traits or it's, both sides can suffer from types of addictions, both sides can suffer from loneliness, from withdrawal, from depression. Isolation, social isolation is always a big factor as well on both sides, because it's hard being a care provider. And oftentimes if it's in a home setting, it's usually the care provision is being done by a family member, oftentimes a spouse. And that spouse is there 24/7 with the individual, and they don't have any kind of respite, and they don't have anybody that they can turn to. So it makes it a difficult situation, and sometimes an abusive situation just occurs because of the fact that you get to that breaking point and you don't mean to, but something happens.
Sure.
And you just can't take it back once it happens.
It's very interesting too. The part that I really got to hear too is kind of you stressing the importance of reporting these incidents, and how oftentimes people are afraid to even bring them forward, afraid of ramifications, things of that nature. You think that's a big reason why they go so underreported?
I think that's a big reason, like I had alluded to with the family and being in a community setting and taking care of the elderly individual. If you're being taken care of by a family member, son, daughter, whomever, you don't want to report something to the authorities because you don't want to get your son or daughter in trouble. You're doing the motherly, you're doing the fatherly thing. You're protecting your child, regardless of what they might be doing to you. So they don't want to report it because they don't want to see their son or their daughter or whomever get taken to jail and spend time in jail and be processed on a criminal offense. So they will just go ahead and endure the abuse at home. In the institutional setting, oftentimes employees don't report because they don't want to be considered the rat and tell on a coworker, because then they're going to have negative ramifications from coworkers. They may be considered the rat, the stool pigeon, whatever, so they just don't say anything oftentimes. And so I think in an institutional setting, it's just as important to be able to have those free lines of communication and feel free to report either an actual abuse situation or a suspected abuse situation, and feel free to do that without having ramifications from administration, from coworkers, from whomever. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's why people don't report.
Now, in the healthcare field, if somebody has witnessed an incident like that, is it mandatory to report these things?
Yes, it is mandatory in the healthcare field. It is mandatory per federal law that if you are in a healthcare setting, whether it be a skilled nursing facility, assisted living, personal care, home health, a domicile residence, it is mandatory that you do report that. It's just your obligation and the law to report if you suspect or you know of an incident of abuse.
Excellent. Well, Debbie, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This was definitely very informative. Hopefully in the future maybe we can sit down for a full episode and really delve deeper into this subject. I think it's a very important one, and as we discussed, it goes underreported. So I think shining a light on it today was really informative for everybody here, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here with Chris Bender, PharmD. It's his first time presenting here at a Diamond Educational Conference. And Chris, you're going to be giving a discussion today, or presenting a discussion on vaccine-preventable illness. Now, talk a little bit about your presentation, your objectives, and how it relates to the overall long-term care field.
Sure. Well, thanks, Adam. First of all, it's really cool to be here. Like you said, in this African Event Center, it's very aptly named, and it's such a cool environment. Especially for my first time presenting somewhere. It's a very nice laid-back environment. It's really cool to kind of takes the edge off seeing some giraffes in the background.
No doubt.
But no, today, so like you said, my presentation today is regarding vaccine-preventable illness. It's very applicable as we sit here right now, given we're entering the beginning of flu season. So it's going to be very applicable just to everyone in general. But specifically regarding to this conference, we're dealing with long-term care patients, and when it comes to vaccinations, I'm going to be discussing the most key vaccines regarding long-term care patients, those being shingles, influenza, and pneumococcal. But more than that, I think what the audience is going to see is I'm overlaying a theme of how can we better basically discuss vaccination with our patients. I know that in today's day and age, it's really easy to get a lot of information. It's just as easy to sometimes get some misinformation as well.
Especially with vaccines.
Exactly.
So much misinformation.
Exactly. So often when we're having these discussions with our patients, they're coming at it with concerns, but at the same time, it's our job to have a better understanding of the foundation of vaccines and immunology so that we can help, sort of alleviate some of their concerns, and we can better promote vaccination programs, not just in the long-term care community, but also maybe they can take it back to discuss with their friends and family, and we can have extended improvement in the overall community as well.
Excellent, and a holistic approach.
Yeah,
beyond,
absolutely.
Yeah, beyond just the scope of here. Now, Chris, you're one of the newer members of the Diamond Drug Information Center. How's that experience been? I know that it's primarily corrections. Our corrections customers are the big focus, but being able to come over here on the long-term care side, how's that been for the kind of questions you field on that end versus the educational effort here? What's that been like for you to experience both worlds?
Yeah, so I think it really helped me that I started off at Diamond as a production pharmacist to begin with for 8 months before starting in the Drug Info Center. And what that did was allow me to gain some experience in terms of the correctional side and the long-term care side. Because you're right, a lot of my day-to-day experience is involving the correctional side. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot. You're not dealing so much with the chronic care management. You're dealing with a lot more unique disease states, some of the hepatitis, some of the HIV patients in that population. I know specifically for me, that's been some of the learning curve. Jumping into that department has been getting up to speed with those particular disease states. So coming back and dealing with the long-term care side, it's really nice because I feel the long-term care side, you get a lot more appreciation for the chronic disease management, a lot of the stuff that that I was a lot more well-versed coming into the job to begin with.
Excellent. And we talked a little bit about your background before we started rolling the tape here. So you have a background in, I understand, retail, and you do have some clinical experience before starting at Diamond. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I actually graduated pharmacy school in 2014. So I've been working as a licensed pharmacist for the past 4 years. I've been a bit of a journeyman so far. I started off doing some experience in the insurance field, doing managed care stuff, some more regulatory business stuff. I did, like I mentioned, some retail experience as well there. And one of the most clinical experiences that I had was doing infusion pharmacy, home infusion specifically, before coming to Diamond. So that kind of helped me gain a better appreciation for clinical management, monitoring, more from like a specific drug monitoring standpoint before coming to Diamond, in which now I went into production, but now I'm into the drug information side, which is such a robust area. There's always something else to learn. It's really amazing. So
yeah, for sure. It is such a robust field, and the kind of queries you respond to and the issues you address each day, it's so broad.
It's wild because, anytime the phone rings, you just kind of think, what am I going to get asked this time? It can be the most simplistic, can I crush this medication? And it could be a completely oddball from a physician asking, how do I manage this complex situation? So you really don't know what you're going to get that day, which, I think is kind of a perk of the job. And also, too, it keeps your day interesting, but also, too, it keeps you always learning, which is really cool. I mean, there's 5 of us up there, and it's just a great group of people. So we all work off of one another. We all learn from one another. And also, too, by being in, I feel like we're in a unique position in the Drug Info Center where we can go and participate in these conferences, too, which, like we had mentioned, this is my first one, but it's really exciting that I get to do this because it also pushes me to continue to stay up to date and to, promote things.
You're actually going to be speaking at our last one of 2018, back in our hometown of Indiana, Pennsylvania. And I can't remember, are you presenting on vaccines there as well?
No, I am not. I'm actually going to be doing one on polypharmacy. It's sort of an evergreen topic in the long-term care setting. I'm going to be discussing polypharmacy, basically things that we can do to address it, to manage it, and to identify it, as well as trying to keep it applicable to all parts. I'm going to be discussing a little bit of the regulatory aspects of polypharmacy, so how it might play into administrators' hands as well, so how it might impact them as well. So trying to keep it broad enough to where it'll be applicable to most attendees.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us here, and best of luck during your presentation coming up here.
Absolutely.
No doubt do a great job, and enjoy your first conference.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
This has been fun.
All right. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break from this dialogue to bring you more dialogue. In this case, Dialogue, D-I-A-L-O-G, stands for the Diamond Information and Learning Opportunities Group. It's Diamond's very own in-house speaker and continuing education bureau. And if you have a group or facility with continuing education needs, Dialogue can help set up an in-service for you. Our expert speakers and educators include pharmacists specializing in gerontology, anticoagulation therapy, and HIV, to name a few specialties. We also have a certified registered nurse practitioner and educator specializing in disease states and well-being. And we also have numerous professional staff with expertise in everything from human resources management to safety and disaster preparedness. Dialogue also offers an Lpn Iv Certification program. It's for licensed practical nurses in the state of Pennsylvania. It's an 8-hour course, and it is approved by the Pennsylvania State Board of Nursing to satisfy the mandated regulation to allow an LPN to manage and initiate IV therapy. The class is only open to facilities, organizations, and groups of 5 or more. For more information on these courses and other continuing education opportunities, please contact Trina Plazio at 800-882-6337, extension 1100. You can also visit www.diamondpharmacyltc.com/learn/dialogue. And now back to PodcastRx.
Hi, and welcome back to PodcastRx. I'm here with Karen Harrell. She is our nurse liaison, and for those of you that aren't familiar, Karen, can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Sure. My role is to make sure there's always a smooth transition from one pharmacy to another. If it's a new facility, I help them get things up and running, do a lot of education, training, and services.
Absolutely. You build a very important bridge with the nursing staff to our facilities, so it's excellent work. But I want to talk to you today. I'm really interested to see your presentation. The end is now in sight. Can you give me a little overview about what you're going to cover today?
What I'm covering is I believe we're doing a very good job with dementia residents in the early stages of dementia, maybe the middle stages. It's the end stage, I think, where we don't have good care planning processes. So my goal today is to give some ideas, thoughts, and hints on how we can do that.
I think that's outstanding. What do you think causes maybe that gap, so to speak, where maybe the end stage care isn't as robust?
I think with dementia, it's very hard to determine what the prognosis is. So when exactly are they terminal? Sometimes they haven't gotten a good formal diagnosis, and I think there's just a lot of people don't see dementia as a terminal disease, so they don't prepare for it.
Right. I think it's a very hard disease to deal with. Not only because you also have to deal with in the cases if maybe the family's involved. It's hard on the family, it's hard on the caregivers. So what are some things that you suggest to make this stage, to make the care plan go more smoothly?
Well, I think you hit on it. I see this as a family unit disease. It's not just a resident disease, and it has taken a very long time. It's a 10 to 12, 15 year terminal disease, so we have to focus not only on the resident but taking care of the family as well.
In your own experience, what kind of success stories have you seen relevant to this care?
Making sure that we're addressing the family and their grieving process. If we see a daughter whose body language is screaming that she has a lot of grief and she's sad, maybe just sitting down with her, offering her a cup of coffee, keeping her as a strong caregiver so that her grief doesn't overwhelm her and we lose her as a caregiver.
Yeah. And you know what? I've experienced this firsthand. I had a grandfather that went through the dementia process, and it was really hard for myself and my family because we felt like we were losing him before we lost him.
Yes.
And it is very challenging. I think really recognizing that and working with the caregivers and giving them strategies, I think there's nothing but benefit there. So how has the course been received today?
I'm supposed to be doing mine next, so I will see what that's like.
Well, I know in looking at the agenda, I'm excited to see that, and we look forward to. You're always a pleasure to hear speak here at the conferences, and we really appreciate your involvement.
Thank you.
So, speaking to your own personal professional career, tell me a little bit about how. One of the big things we push here, obviously, continuing education, and how important it is in the healthcare industry. In your own career, what kind of continuing education resources have you taken advantage of?
Always trying to learn new things, try to attend conferences myself, and I try to make sure that I'm looking at things, not just maybe that I'm very interested in, but maybe some things that I need to know about too. Maybe some pharmacy things that I wouldn't naturally pick.
Sure.
So I try to make sure that I'm getting a broad base of information.
Sure, completely understand. And you work with RNs on such a regular basis. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that they run into? Maybe like things that maybe we need more education on, or even just speak to challenges in general?
I think for nurses, it's time. They just don't seem to have enough time. And that's one of the things I addressed today in my conference topic is that nurses don't take time to grieve a lot of times, so that grief can build up.
That's an excellent point, because I think sometimes we miss the fact, yes, of course, it's hard on the patient, it's hard on the family, but what about the caregivers who are with them every single day? You obviously, we're people, we develop attachments, and of course it has to be challenging.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so what are some strategies that you offer for taking that time to grieve?
Well, first of all, making sure that the staff understands that grieving should be expected. It's an expectation. The way most people leave in assisted living is by dying, passing away. And I don't think we ever address that in orientation or ongoing training. So I think every time we have a resident who is coming to the end of life, we should talk about that resident and talk about what's happening with them. What's the anatomy and physiology? I think peer support is also important.
Yeah.
Are the nurses talking to each other? Did their favorite resident just pass away? And maybe they didn't need a grief support group 3 months ago, but now they do.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be ongoing. Just like we teach them how to take out the garbage and set the table and all the other things that an assisted living requires, we should be doing the same thing with grieving.
Absolutely, and I think it's important that those working in healthcare know it's okay to not be okay. Like, I think everybody's like, I gotta keep, just carry on. I gotta have other people to care for, and they just want to carry on with it. And while that's respectable, that you just want to do your job to the best of your ability, it is okay sometimes to deal with those emotions. They need to be dealt with.
Yep.
Very important topic, Karen. Really excited to hear more on it, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I understand you've come to all 3 conferences here, this year included. And what do you like the most about driving 30 minutes down here to the zoo for a conference?
I think that the CEs are pretty good. I like the venue. I've always had a pleasant time with Diamond Pharmacy. They've always been super friendly, and I just enjoy a day away from the building with a nice view.
It doesn't get much better than that, it sounds like. And what about courses today? What of the agenda has been like a standout topic for you?
Well, none of the nursing, the first one with C. diff, I'm not a nurse, I'm an administrator, but definitely elder abuse. I take it very seriously in my building, so it's always interesting to see what others have to say about elder abuse.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I'm joined now by Deborah Melito, PharmD, board-certified geriatric pharmacist, one of our earlier guests on the PodcastRx show. And today she is talking about Clostridium difficile guidelines. And I've heard so much about this topic just generally reading through long-term care news. It seems like one of those topics that the importance can't be overstated. It's a very prevalent infection. And tell us a little more about what you're speaking on today in regard to that topic.
So at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, the Infectious Disease Society of America released new guidelines to treat Clostridium difficile, or C. diff. And we were anxiously awaiting those guidelines since 2010. That had been the last update. So we feel that these guidelines are really good ones to follow. They not only include the management of C. diff, but they also include infection prevention and control issues, as well as antimicrobial stewardship.
Where does C. diff rank in terms of infection control issues among skilled facilities. Where does that rank in general of different issues that a skilled facility could have?
So C. diff is one of those infections that we really don't want to see in our facilities. But unfortunately, it occurs for numerous reasons. First of all, our residents may be on an antimicrobial that predisposes them to developing C. diff, or they might come into contact with another resident that has had C. diff, or they might even be admitted to a room that a previous resident had C. diff. So it ranks right up there as an infectious disease that we really don't want to see at our facilities.
Now, you've been presenting at these Diamond Educational Conferences we've had them for, I think, 14, 15 years, something like that. How long do you go back with them? I mean, you've been at every one since I've been with the company, which was a number 5 years, but I've seen you at every one of these. Do you go back even further than you go back to the beginning?
Yeah, I've been with the company for 13 years, so I got right into this as soon as I arrived on the scene.
What do you really enjoy most about these? Because we have 4 of them a year. As somebody who looks at this from a clinical perspective, a pharmacist perspective, how important is this continuing education for the personnel at these facilities?
Well, Adam, you're using a word that I think so highly of, and that's education. I think that Diamond Pharmacy Services does a terrific job in making sure that you get your medications at the lowest possible cost, and our service is wonderful. But we also have this value-added service of education, and these 4 educational conferences that we now have grown from 1 a year to 2 to 3 to 4, and we cover a myriad of topics that our nursing home administrators and any of the RNs at those facilities, as well as personal care administrators, can actually receive 6 complimentary credits for the day. And we get really good responses back from these educational days that it was information that they could take back to their facility tomorrow and use.
Understand it correctly, there is also is there a legal requirement for getting continuing education credit? I assume that varies state to state. I know there's different accreditations. Here we're in Ohio, and I know there's a different set of, I believe it's the belts. So is there a legal requirement for staff in these facilities to have these updated continuing education credits?
Yes, Adam. NHAs, whether it be personal care, assisted living, or skilled, and the RNs are required to have a certain amount of continuing education credits.
I think it's really, as you said, a value-added service. I think it's really interesting that we as a company put these on. You can network with colleagues in the field here, you can meet vendors, but ultimately the education is top-notch. And I think, too, the fact that we can staff the entire event with speakers from Diamond.
Yes, and we do have a program called Dialogue, and that's our Speakers Bureau, and we really have a group of talented professionals that can be called upon at any time to offer these types of in-services, not only at Education Day, but they can come to your facilities and provide an in-service to you too on any of these topics.
I wanted to touch on, you're going to be at the next conference. It's back at our hometown in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Will you also be presenting on the C. diff as well?
Yes, I will be speaking on Clostridium difficile due to the fact that there are new guidelines that have come out. And that's really what we try to do, is anything that's new, evidence-based guidelines, we definitely want to share that with the group. Sometimes we do surveys to see what is of interest to the group, but yes, I will be talking about Clostridium difficile in Indiana.
And I assume you'll be doing the conferences again in 2019. Do you have an idea already of topics? I'm going to assume, knowing our other conversation we had on another episode, that it will be antimicrobial stewardship focused?
It could be, but I don't like to just be in a silo with antimicrobial stewardship. I have a lot of areas of interest. Another one that I'm sort of thinking about is medication reconciliation and how that plays into the Impact Act that actually became effective October 1st a few days ago in our long-term care setting. So that could be a topic in the future, but it's always, a very dynamic situation as to what does the audience want to hear.
Dynamic indeed. Well, Deb, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and we look forward to your presentation today and all of them going forward.
Thank you.
And is this the first time you've been here to an education conference with Diamond?
First time.
What do you think?
I'm having a great time. Learning a lot. You're seeing these animals at the zoo, a great venue. I'm having a wonderful time.
Excellent. Will you be back next year?
Definitely.
All right. And what about the coursework and the continuing education? What have you liked the most about that part of the conference?
I would say it's been a lot of clinical education that I thought has found to be very beneficial. The vaccinations was key, especially right now with the flu season upon us. The elder abuse was a good one too.
Excellent. Well, we're glad you're having a great time at your first conference. We definitely hope you'll be back and have a safe trip back to Cuyahoga Falls.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. This podcast features conversations with healthcare professionals. Their statements and opinions discussed herein are for informational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered professional advice and should not be used as a substitute for the advice of an appropriately qualified and licensed healthcare professional. Therefore, listeners must not rely on the statements made herein.
On the next episode of PodcastRx.
I'm Nick McFerrin. I've been with Diamond Pharmacy for going on 8 years now.
Join us for a conversation with Nick McFerrin, one of our long-term care sales reps.
I go out and I speak to administrators and executive directors of personal care homes about their pharmacy service. Try to develop a relationship with them.
Learn how his formative experiences as an EMT shaped his ideas of patient care and how he tries to incorporate those ideas into building relationships with personal care and assisted living clients.
If everything goes according to plan when they are looking for a new pharmacy or they start to experience problems with their current pharmacy, they'll give us a call and then we'll come out and tell them how Diamond does things. And most of the time, they'll switch over to us.
PodcastRx is produced by Diamond Pharmacy Services, the nation's largest correctional pharmacy provider and Pennsylvania's largest independently owned long-term care pharmacy. To learn more, visit www.diamondpharmacy.com.
Music by Maximiliano Silvera, sound expressed by Getty Images.